Well, welcome to week 12 of the course. Got just 3 weeks left, and then finals week, and then we're done. And I think come early May 12th, I want to say, a number of you will be graduating and moving on with the rest of your lives. And that's it's an exciting prospect. Behind me is the Courtright Library at Otterbein University, once called Otterbein College. And the reason I've got it using it as the background is this is where I learned to be a Civil War historian. Not in college, not in graduate school, but right here, because this place was about maybe 15 minutes walk from the high school where I was supposed to be studying. And as often as possible, beginning in my sophomore year, I would skip school and come down to the library and come on in and spend all day in the stacks, reading everything I could find about the Civil War. Primary sources. I've got into microfilm of the New York Times, Harper's Ferry, other news magazines of the day, and I learned how to do research, um, and and it all worked out very well. I mean, do not try this at home. Skipping school a whole lot and hurting your transcript a great deal and all kinds of things. There's a big downside to me skipping school a lot, but there's a big upside too. I learned to be a historian, and I wanted to be a historian, and now I am. Now, that having been said, it would never have occurred to me to become a historian in any real sense, except for this one person. I want to share the screen for you here so you can see her. There we go. Okay. That woman saved my life. Her name is, or was, Billy Cranford. She was my ninth grade English teacher at Blendon Junior High School in Westerville. And she realized that I enjoyed writing and I was a good writer. And rather than keep me on the regular English assignments as everybody else did, she told me one day, she said, "Mark, what I want you to do is figure out something you want to write about, go away and do it. And then, anything you want to write about is fine. And then from time to time, bring it to me to read and comment on and so on." And that is what we did. Now, when my parents found out about this arrangement, they were beside themselves with baffled rage, because they felt like Ms. Wilson was falling down on the job and not doing her job. But in point of fact, they couldn't stop her, they couldn't stop me. And I began to write a history of the Antietam campaign, one of the major campaigns of the American Civil War. And I didn't get the manuscript published, but I tell you what, as the years went by, and I did something that Ms. Wilson encouraged me to do, which was to think in terms of writing for publication. A great deal of the work that I did on that early project sort of eventually found its way into print, and a number of my early articles were tracked back very closely to the project that Ms. Wilson put me on. And the book that she's got in her hands, this picture was taken about 2006, many years after she was my ninth grade English teacher. That would have been 1974. That book I dedicated. That's my first book, and I dedicated it to her. I made up my mind years before that if I ever wrote a book, I was going to dedicate it to Ms. Wilson. And what happened on this particular day, this picture, was I had gone down to the Westminster Thurber retirement center. Just think it's down on Neal Avenue, and was there to give a public lecture to the retirees there. And there was and it was interesting because the person introducing me introduced me in a kind of an odd sort of way, in a very specific kind of way. And then at the end of his introduction, let me know that Ms. Wilson was in the audience. I hadn't seen her in years. Um, in fact, I hadn't seen her in 11 years, not since I picked her up for dinner one night in 1995, right after the book was published, and took her out to dinner at one of the nicest restaurants in town. It was a nice moment. Um, she had Alzheimer's by then, and after I gave my talk, we went up to her little apartment and talked for about 90 minutes. And 3 or 4 times during our conversation, she had to stop and ask me who I was, and would tell me, I don't remember very well anymore because I have Alzheimer's, and that happened 3 or 4 times. And and finally, at the end of this conversation, she asked me again, remind me, who are you? And I said, Mark Grimsley, ma'am. And she said, I know you. I remember you. Well, I'll never forget her. Everything I've become, everything I owe tracks back to that one woman who believed in me at a time when nobody else did. You know, not to the extent that she did. Sometimes a single individual can have that kind of effect on you. So I just could not begin this week's module without telling you about Ms. Wilson, because, of course, in addition to being my introduction to the world of writing and of history, she, in a way, was not quite my introduction to the American Civil War, but she sort of took my existing interests, in the Civil War and put it on overdrive, as you can see from the backdrop of the Audubon College Library, where I sneaked away to day after day after day. Now, I'll take the slide down. What I want you to know at the outset is that the Civil War has a special place in my heart, and not just as a historian, but as a human being, because without going into the details, I had a pretty rough time of it growing up. And for me, history was a kind of a refuge. I could sort of retreat into the past as a way of kind of getting away of all the craziness in my present. And I came to feel intimately acquainted with the Civil War, almost as if I had, was experiencing the Civil War in kinds of ways. And so, as a professional historian, my interests have broadened and they've gone in different directions, and the way in which I engage with the Civil War has changed as well. But it will always have a kind of special place in my heart because of Ms. Wilson, because of the way in which, to some extent, it saved me during my teenage years. So, with that in mind, I want you to sort of indulge me with some of the choices that I'll be using in terms of material in the Civil War to be showing to you, particularly a song that's coming up soon after this. I get done with this sort of preambling. It's by Crosby, Stills, and Nash. It's called Daylight Again. And it's a kind of a later version of a song they did in the 1960s called Find the Cost of Freedom. And Daylight Again, that precedes this version of Find the Cost of Freedom, tracks back directly to the tragedy of the American Civil War, and serves as a reminder of just how tragic that time was. I think it's one of these things where, with the Civil War, it's like mostly people who deal with the Civil War, they're like Civil War buffs and Civil War enthusiasts, and they it's the generals and the battles and the vivid paintings of the action and this kind of a thing. And they tend to think of those kinds of terms. I've seen people who are Civil War buffs really enjoy the subject, but I mean, like, really enjoy the subject, like it's great fun, and you can lose track, of just how horrible it was. They say the words but they don't really believe it. It doesn't sink into them. Well, you listen to that song because I want to place you where you need to be if you have if you have a chance of really understanding the Civil War. I think I've told you before, I'll tell you again. I don't like having to test you on things because you focus on what's going to be on the test as opposed to actually learning the things that I would like for you to learn. And I feel trapped, in that reality. But to the extent that you can do it, please try to sort of, follow me into um, this world of the Civil War and try to learn what it is that I have to teach you and will be trying to teach you. Um, okay, I think that's all I need to say for now. I hope your week's off to a good start, and let's get going.